I am very excited to have our guest today, Vasu Gupta. She and I connected on social media while having commonalities in our blog with writing about the intersection of mental and spiritual wellness. To be completely transparent, I was insecure and questioned having a conversation with Vasu because she seemed to be a lot more grounded in spirituality with a lot more spiritual intelligence and very stable in her foundation with her beliefs. And I was also fearful for having a conversation outside of Christianity because I'm still on my spiritual journey and I'm still learning a lot about Christianity. So I didn't want to be confused or have my beliefs compromised in any way. But after taking some time to read more of her blog and her writings, I learned that she was a lot like me in the beginning, someone who didn't have a deep understanding at the start, but then sought out answers and had a spiritual awakening. Vasu is a spiritual writer, coach, and speaker who aims to simplify spirituality to help find your spiritual shenanigans. She offers some unconventional, affordable spiritual workshops, as well as one-on-one coaching, all accessible while you sit at home in your pajamas. She also runs a free monthly spiritual newsletter and sends self-healing tools every month. She has a blog, which you could find at myspiritualshenanigans.blog. Thank you so much, Vasu, for sitting down with me today and having a conversation about the differences that we have, commonalities, and how you were able to simplify metaphysics to give a simplified answer and relatable way to the topic that we'll be talking about, karma.
Thanks, Tesa. That was such a lovely introduction, and it is an honor to be here. I think it's a beautiful opportunity for both of us to collaborate and bring out the best of both worlds, East and West.
I know. I want to take a minute and have an appreciation for how we connected and how you are in India and I'm in America, and how we're able to have this conversation, because there was a time, I'm sure, especially years ago, where it would be completely taboo for us to connect, for us to talk about this. And the fact that internet has given us this opportunity, I think, is so beautiful. And I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to have.
Me too, and I agree. We've come a long way as a world. Awesome. Let's get started.
Yeah. So if you could just tell us about your spiritual awakening and how this all started for you.
Okay. Well, 11:11 on the clock is what happened to me. And it was just some random day. And I see it for the first time. And I'm thinking, well, I've heard my American friends say that it's a lucky number, make a wish. And I'm thinking, should I? So at the time, I do remember making some wish. I don't remember what it was. But in the evening, again, I looked it up because it was on my mind. And it was just browsing through the internet. And, it's been 4 hours. And the way you end up reading about a giraffe at the end of 4 hours, it was something like that for me. I don't know how I just stumbled upon this website. And it started talking about angel numbers. And I got intrigued. I kept reading until I got overwhelmed. And then I'm thinking, this is all too woo-woo. So I closed the browser on my phone and I checked the time, and it is 11:11.
Oh, wow.
And I get goosebumps, and I get goosebumps right now sharing this because it was just so unbelievable. And up till that point, I was in a circumstance mentally where I couldn't understand what was happening. Life was okay. It had been a couple of months where I'd been living alone, and it was giving me a lot of time to think and rethink about my priorities. So you could say I was having an existential crisis of sorts, an identity crisis. I was asking questions like, okay, is this 9 to 6 job my purpose? is all I'm going to do for the rest of my life is work on the weekdays and then buy groceries on the weekends. And it became uncomfortable to the point where I tried everything. So, people would say, go make new friends. Okay, check. Did I feel better? No. Okay, I tried home DIY activities. My house looked greater. I didn't feel better. I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. I started meditating, but none of that really was enough. So finally, that one fortunate day when 11/11 happened to me, it was just beautiful. And I think, of course, we say the spiritual journey is something that was happening long before we realized it, but that was my moment.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that it's beautiful, and I love hearing about other people's stories, because with my spirituality, I didn't even begin to look into it until I was a young adult. I had zero spiritual intelligence. And so hearing about others, it's refreshing, and it reminds me that I'm not alone. So thank you so much for sharing. So could you talk about a little bit how you grew up and your beliefs growing up and how they differ now?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a Hindu family, and our belief system is traditional. We have a lot and a lot of gods and goddesses. So we have the privilege to keep jumping from one god to the other until we find our peace of mind. I did do that myself until around my awakening, where I finally felt my comfort in Shiva. So my family has been traditional in the sense that we still do the things that our culture wants us to do. For example, we have certain evening prayers, we do them together, we go to the temple together, small gestures that remind us of who we are and what our purpose is in life, and just to connect to nature, to connect to each other, to connect to God. That being said, there were some aspects of my childhood. I wouldn't say I was very spiritual. I didn't have that intelligence either, but I was very religious. So we had elements where we would be taught about our religion in a very mythological way. And it's beautiful, but sometimes you wonder how real it is. And when you see God as perfect, even in a incarnated form, then it becomes a challenge because you're not able to relate as much. Because God is perfect. How can I be perfect? I'm human. That was something that was definitely on my mind, and this journey has helped with that. And also to deepen my understanding of the whole process of why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest similarities that I think universally we have is that it's never perfect. It's never, we could, like you grew up in a belief system with religion, and I didn't. And neither one of those was cut and dry. And we don't come into this world having 100% faith, and that stays 100% of our life. There's always some type of challenge that we have to go on a spiritual journey to, find our belief. And I think for me, that's always important to remember, because my husband, he's always had such a good foundation. And I've always thought that that's how it's always been. He's always been secure and with his family too. But I'm sure that there's always questions that we have and things that come up. But let's dive into what we're going to talk about today. So first, we're going to talk about metaphysics, and you're going to define that for us. And then we're going to go on to simplify that onto one aspect, which would be karma. So how would you define metaphysics?
Okay, so simplified, metaphysics can be said as exploring our existence. So it's about understanding the deeper questions of life from an angle that integrates our reality beyond the present moment to the possibility of a before life and an afterlife, integrating other aspects, other realms, other dimensions. So some of these things can be strange at first, but that is the beauty of metaphysics, is that it begins to make sense.
Yeah, I love that explanation. It's just so simple because when we first had a conversation and you said metaphysics, I was like, whoa, I literally Googled it because I'm like, what is that? Just the word physics kind of throws me for a loop because I don't understand it.
Me neither.
But to simplify it in such a way that it's just exploring existence. And that is really spirituality, or a part of spirituality. So I love that. So let's get into karma. What is karma?
All right, that's a tough one. But how I see it is, we think the law of cause and effect, karma, is the bad guy in our life, and it's here to give us a tough fight. But I want to say that's wrong, because karma is a neutral law. So it's simply about getting what you deserve. And it is us as humans which put the opinion that it's a good thing or a bad thing. But really, it's just happening to us, and that's that.
Even I, hearing the word karma, it just kind of sounds negative because of what society has put on it. It's like, oh, wait for karma to come back around for you, or that's karma happening, but we never think of it being neutral. It's, getting something that you deserve. So that kind of leads us in to, you can't be jinxed out of something you deserve. So what do you mean by it being something, that you deserve and you can't be jinxed out of it?
Okay, so my belief is that we are accountable for whatever happens to us. That is karma. That is saying, all right, I did something in the past and now it's adding up for me. I'm not going to blame somebody. I'm not going to blame someone. I'm going to say it was me that brought it on. In what way, it doesn't matter, but it's here now and I have to deal with it, right? So the moment I do that, then I don't need to worry about somebody else. And here, jinx plays a role, because what we think is, oh, I said it out loud. Oh no, my success is out of my hands. It's gone. Or I told this particular person something, and then the right moment after that, things fell apart for me. We're giving our power away. We're saying that you have a bigger role in my life than I do. And that doesn't feel accountable at all. So karma is neither biased, and nor is it favoritizing the other person. They can't have that control if you don't give it to them. So you can't be jinxed out of it unless you want to be jinxed out of it, unless you believe that it's too good for you to be true.
So you kind of create it for yourself, depending on if you have a positive or negative view.
Yeah, so that's a good way to look at it.
So karma really isn't the bad guy. It's unbiased and balanced. So how do you set yourself up to free yourself from this myth that karma's bad?
It kind of adds up to what we started talking about, is that initially we wanted to look at it as the bad guy, but everything happening to you is your karma. Everything, even the good stuff. So you should celebrate it. It's an opportunity for you to say, okay, well, I deserve good and I'm getting it. And most of our days aren't as bad as we make them to be. We're just focused on the bad because that's how we're inherently, trained to do things. But once you start being more grateful and start realizing the value of karma, then you're like, oh, good things do happen.
Mm-hmm. I think that to bring Christianity into this a little bit, I think with a lot of people, when it comes to creator of the universe or God, you start thinking that God owes you something. And so we pray for a specific something and we don't get it, and then we get angry, and we must think, if God was real, if there was a creator of the universe. In Christianity, we believe that God is a loving, kind, genuine, and generous God. But if he's allowing this bad thing to happen to us, he must not be real. And I hear that many times, but I think that for Christianity, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the belief of how we came about, but in Genesis, as far as Adam and Eve, is that we don't live in heaven. We don't live in a divine world with God. We're not with God now. We have sinned and we live in a broken world. But when I think of karma and how you're explaining it, I can't help but think about, bad things happen to good people and vice versa, good things happen to bad people. But I talked to a pastor recently and he shared this, and to me, it was so beautiful. It was that, can God take something bad that has happened and turn it into beauty? And I think that's the overall takeaway, because I think, and maybe you could share a little bit more as far as karma and how bad things happen to good people and your perspective on that. But I think that there's always room for it to turn beautiful.
Beautifully said.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a fair question. Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? But how I see it is that the universe is the only thing that is permanent in our life. And when we lose something, it was because it was impermanent. So why are we fighting against the permanent to hold on to something impermanent? The universe is always there. It's got your back. It's working for you around the clock. How can you question it, right? Why are we losing our faith over something so small? And if that thing has left our life, it would be with good reason. Like you said, it will become beautiful. When I look back at most of the things in my life, in retrospect, it's become even more awesome than I could have made of it had things been my way.
I love the way you said that. It's that the universe, and for a Christian verbiage, I do want to bring a little bit of attention to this, is although there's several different beliefs, you said this in your blog and I loved it, is that we all have different paths to spirituality, but we all end up in the same place. And to me, when I read that, I was like, wow, like that is so powerful, because all over the world, there's different beliefs, and there's parts of the world that don't have Christianity. There's parts of the world that don't have Hinduism. I have never been exposed to Hinduism ever, but the belief of, we all end up in the same place and having similar commonalities within. I just wanted to bring a little bit of attention to that because I think that's so important. But when you say that the only permanent thing is the universe or God, and how can we question that? If we could only have that perspective 100% of the time in our life, we'd be so much more at peace, because life is hard and it's hard to have such a good perspective. But I think that's just a good reminder, is all of this is just so temporary. For your beliefs and for mine, it's the same. It's that eventually, it's gone. And when you look back at it, it does seem so minute compared to, what we look at now. And I think this whole thing is just wonderful.
Yeah. I would even go as far as saying, people say don't have attachments, but I think you should just be very clingy to the universe, very attached to the universe, to your God, because that's the only thing that can get us through anything.
Oh, I love that. I really like that. So going back to your blog post, there's fill every moment from now on with good karma. What did you mean by that?
Well, look at it like this. Now that you know that you're accountable, wouldn't you want to live a little better? Of course, right? We all do. And there's so many people that don't realize that you have the power to change your circumstances, and only you do. Sure, the universe is working in your favor, but if you're not grabbing the opportunity, it's gone. So the moment you realize, hey, I could do this differently, you're going to do it differently. And therefore, you're going to create good karma for yourself. So why not just focus on the good karma? Don't worry about what's happened in the past. Don't worry about what you've already created. I believe in grace. I believe that the universe is forgiving, very compassionate. So the moment you realize that I've done something wrong, okay, there could have been consequences in the past, but now that you're changed, it doesn't even matter. Maybe you won't have to go through things the way you would have.
One of my second thoughts when, reading about karma and speaking with you was that when you think about karma being neutral, or how commonly it's seen as bad, and then you think of it as good, then you try to keep score. Like, oh man, like, I must have some bad karma coming because that wasn't good at all. And then the same with the good. It's like, I did all this good. There's no way bad things should happen to me. And so you start talking about not trying to even the score because it could make things worse.
I think that's one of my favorites. I'll be biased, but the reason is, in most of our relationships, what we're focused on when the other person has hurt us is, are they hurt yet? Did they get affected yet? We're monitoring and we're like micromanaging karma, and we're waiting for the universe to serve them their due. But what happens is, you get fed up, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind today. Like, you become sinister, right? But here's a perspective. And I'm going to take the aspect of reincarnation because that's what spirituality has brought for me. But at some point in our lifetimes, or in this lifetime, you may have done something to someone that is happening to you right now. When you did it back then, you didn't realize the impact. Therefore, it needed to happen to you for you to understand that it wasn't great. Now, if you think that whatever is happening to you is great, then it's good karma, sure, but you're going to want that thing to keep happening to you, right? So in that effect, you'd be serving good karma. But the moment something bad happens to you, you're like, ouch, that didn't feel right. And it can challenge your belief and the way you treat people, right? And this is why I say don't try to even the score, is because that person is contracted. They have a soul contract with you to teach you that lesson. Nothing is by coincidence, right? And maybe they just completed a contract with you. But the moment you try to even the score, what you've done is you've gone down to their level and you're building more karma for yourself. So it's like a vicious cycle now. And then the other aspect of this is that maybe you did not deserve this. You genuinely did not deserve this. What then? Well, it's not up to us to decide how that person receives their karmic dues. The universe has a beautiful way and a very personal way of bringing lessons to us, right? It's customized and tailored for each of our lives. And what you're doing is building your own karmic debt. And it's not necessary that the other person is going to get it. So why are you getting your hands dirty, right? Just focus on yourself and let the other person be and learn your lesson. That's pretty much it.
Going back to earlier in our conversation when I kind of explained that God makes everything beautiful, what you just said kind of relates more to that, because it's seeing that you should just sometimes let things be. And especially if something, traumatic or bad has happened to you, because we don't know the reason. And I don't think that sometimes we're meant to know. We'll probably never know. That's the hard thing. One of my biggest challenges with spirituality was I've had a lot of traumatic events happen in my life, and you end up asking why. And and that could leave you down a rabbit hole when someone says everything happens for a reason. Well, you want to know that reason, right? You want to know like why me, you know, this terrible thing. And to have some type of foundation to know that good can come from it. So in your beliefs and how your spirituality, I think it relates pretty well with this, because it also says, you know, you could be doing good for somebody else and teaching a lesson, but we don't know what we've deserved in a past life. So I know this is where it can kind of get messy with beliefs, and especially with me, because I am not a expert in Christianity. I'm still learning a lot, but I think that's great insight to keep in our minds for sure. And it kind of leads into not waiting to let karma hit somebody. So we just talked about evening the score. It's like, I want to give them a piece of my mind. Like, I can't wait for, you know, God to show them. And you kind of just wait. And then now we're waiting for karma to hit somebody. So tell us a little bit about what you said when it came to that.
Well, it's interesting because there was this quote that I heard very long ago, and it resonated, and it still does. The quote was something like, when somebody does something hurtful to you, it happened once. But when you keep replaying it in your head, you're torturing yourself. So if I thought of that thing 1,000 times, to me, it was real 1,000 times. And when you're waiting around for karma to hit somebody, you're in that energy. You're creating a mess for yourself mentally, physically. You're draining yourself. And it can become toxic. You can become toxic for yourself, right? So the idea that karma is going to hit somebody, you don't know when. And it's our ego that wants answers right away. We want instant gratification. But it's about knowing that most of the time, things turn out fine. And if they haven't turned out fine, it's because the story's not over yet, right? So exit the loop. Stop waiting around and take action for your life, and don't let it happen to you again. That's the best we can do.
I love that phrase, that if things are not great, then your story's not over yet.
Yeah.
I think especially in mental health, which we're not talking about, but it's a thing that I'm passionate about, is that there is a lot of depression, and there's people who have suicidal thoughts. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it, is that if you're not happy now, if things are not good now, it just means your story's not over yet. And how inspiring is that? You know?
Absolutely.
That in itself, and if I were in a depression, it's like really uplifting to hear, is that, you know, that's like a way better way of saying everything's going to be okay.
It is.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that part. The last thing that you wrote about was, if you want big karmic changes, take big steps. This is my favorite.
All right, we've taken sides. So it's easy to think that, okay, I understand karma and it's going to happen to me and I'm going to test it out. So what you do is, for an hour, you act like a good person. And then you're like, nope, nothing changed. I don't believe in karma. But you have to change on the inside out. You have to be huge in your decisions and be like, nope. From this moment onwards, I don't gossip. From this moment onwards, I'm authentic. I place my truth in front of me, right? When you take big decisions, there's no way that karma can add up to you in a bad way. You're revolutionizing your life. And my belief is that you work with your karma. If you understand that you've created something messy for yourself in the past, it doesn't mean it has to go on. You don't have to hold on to it, right? Let it go. Create something wonderful for yourself. And it's tried and tested, guys. It works. You just got to keep focusing on the better than the worse.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to taking big steps, I think no matter what your beliefs are, is to always seek a reasonable explanation. And this comes full circle as far as a spiritual awakening, with having no knowledge of spirituality and you growing up in a religion, is that if you have questions, seek answers. And when you are able to do that in Christianity, people say, seek God and he will show him. And so often, because of Hollywood and because of, different sci-fi things, is when you hear that, you think God is going to literally show up right in front of me. I'm going to see him and there's going to be rays coming down from the sky and all of this stuff. But really, that's not what it means, because it's so hard to explain. Even in like my spiritual journey, I had questions. So I started asking a lot with my husband's family. And then one of the bigger decisions of going to the university I go to is that it's a Christian school. And I knew that going to a Christian school, it would require study biblically. And those are things that I don't know. So I would say, I think it was 6 months. Every week I would write a new Bible verse and I would try to understand it and relate to it. And from then on, it just kind of grew and sprouted. And I don't know if I could ever go back, because I really don't, because it's really has been an awakening. And Christianity is just where, I came from and what I resonated with most. But now what I like to think about is that no matter what your path is, which I'm gonna steal it from you, I'm probably gonna use it from the rest of my life, is that no matter what your path is, as long as you seek, God, creator of the universe, things like that, we all end up in the same place. Do you have any last thoughts that you would like to share on this topic?
Actually, I do. I think the one thing that if I could tell you is that the universe is never against you. It's always working for you. Even when tough times are there, it's only helping you get clear of your karmic debt. So never let go of what's permanent. Focus on whatever is all pervasive in your life. And let go of your attachments and let the universe step in. Because the moment something is leaving your life, it's creating a space for something new to enter as well. And you have to trust that it's going to be beautiful, whatever comes next.
That's beautiful. I'm not even going to say anything after, because I want people to kind of like just sit in with that and kind of think on that a little bit. But thank you so much for joining me on this conversation and enlightening all of us and being able to talk about two completely different worlds. But before we go, can you tell us where people can find you?
Absolutely, Tessa. And it's been such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. You can read more about all these spiritual shenanigans on my blog, which is called myspiritualshenanigans.blog. And you'll get the link to the rest of my social medias over there as well. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.